someone is looking up your address, not in the alarming way, in the specific, slightly nervous, completely intentional way of someone who already knows where you live but needs to look it up again because the last time they were there was long enough ago that they are not entirely sure the memory is accurate. Or because looking it up is the concrete, practical, undeniable step of converting a decision from something happening in their head into something happening in the world. Looking up an address is the moment a thought becomes a plan. They are looking it up. I want to tell you who this is before anything else, because the title of this reading promises something you will not believe, and I intend to make good on that promise in the most specific way the energy will allow me to. This is not someone you have been expecting. That is the essential piece. Not unexpected in the sense of a stranger or someone with no connection to you, but unexpected in the specific sense of someone whose appearance at your door would require a significant recalibration of how you have understood the current state of things between you. Someone whose showing up would immediately raise a question that their last communication with you did not leave room for. Someone you had in some part of your private thinking placed in a category that did not include the possibility of them arriving at your house. That category is wrong, and they are about to walk through it. Let me describe what I am seeing because the scene came through clearly and its details matter. A figure in a familiar space, their space, not yours yet. The specific private environment where a person has their interior life without the modification that comes from being observed. And in that environment, they are doing something that looks completely ordinary from the outside. They are still, not the still of someone resting, the still of someone in the final moments of a decision that has been made but not yet executed. The particular quality of pause that belongs to the space between deciding and doing, between the conclusion of an internal process and the beginning of an external one. They have their phone in their hand. It is not a metaphor. The image is that literal. Their phone in their hand with something on the screen that is the practical translation of everything they have been turning over in the private space of their own mind for longer than this moment would suggest. The screen has your address on it, or the directions to you, or your name in a search that has led to something that tells them how to get to where you are. They are staring at it, not processing it. They processed it already. They are simply sitting with the reality of having arrived at this point, of being the person who is looking at directions to someone they were not sure they would ever find themselves moving toward again, or for the first time in this particular way. I want to tell you who this is, because the energy is specific enough that this is someone from a chapter that felt closed. Not closed badly, necessarily, but closed in the way that things close when life moves people in different directions and the energy between them settles into something quiet and unmoving that neither person has been actively tending. A person who exists in your life as a presence you still carry in some form, in the texture of certain memories, in the specific quality of something that was once active and has since gone still, without either of you having made a definitive choice for the stillness. It simply arrived through circumstance or through the particular inertia of two people who both assumed the other was equally at peace with the distance. One of them was not equally at peace with the distance, and you are about to find out which one. NWM. I want to describe what has been happening inside this person during the period of stillness, because the stillness on the outside does not accurately represent what has been happening on the inside. Not for them. There has been a parallel life running in them. One version of their life is the visible one, the one where your name does not come up frequently, where the chapter that contained you has been filed appropriately into the appropriate place in the organization of their past, where the ordinary forward momentum of their daily existence has continued without obvious interruption. And underneath that visible life, another one, where you appear without being invited, where certain things produce a response they have learned to manage quickly before it becomes visible, where the thought of you arrives in the gap between one activity and the next and sits there for a beat longer than something from a genuinely closed chapter would sit. A closed chapter does not continue to interrupt. Something that still has life in it does. They have been interrupting themselves with the thought of you for long enough that the interruptions are no longer surprising. They have become the texture of a certain kind of quiet moment, the familiar return of something that will not stay filed. And at a certain point, the frequency of the interruption changed. Not more often, more urgent, as though whatever had been content to surface briefly and then subside has decided that brief surfacing is no longer sufficient, as though the energy behind the appearing has built to a level that brief appearances cannot discharge. Something needed to be done. They are doing it. Something needed to be done. They are doing it. I want to describe what doing it has felt like in the hours since the decision crystallized, because decisions of this nature do not produce a clean, settled calm once they are made. They produce a specific, restless, almost electric quality of energy that is different from the exhaustion of the indecision that preceded them. The body knows something has changed before anything external has changed, before anyone else knows what has been decided, before the address has been entered into navigation or the departure has been scheduled. The body is already running at a different frequency, already oriented toward the doing in a way that makes the space between deciding and acting feel almost unbearably charged. That is the quality of energy I am reading from them right now. Charged, restless, already in motion internally, even while the external move has not yet happened. What you are going to feel when they arrive, if you are paying attention to the energy before the words, is the residue of that charge. The specific, slightly breathless quality of someone who has been running at a different frequency for long enough that it is visible in how they hold their body, in the quality of their eye contact, in the particular intensity of being in a moment they have been imagining for longer than they are going to admit to you immediately. You will feel it before they say anything. Trust what you feel. Let me speak to something specific that happened. A moment that I feel clearly in the energy as the thing that converted a recurring thought into an imminent action. Something occurred recently, not to them, something they witnessed or received or encountered in the ordinary movement of their daily life that carried your frequency in a way that hit harder than it should have, given how much time has passed and how settled the distance between you was supposed to be by now. Maybe they saw something that reminded them of you with a specificity that generic memory does not produce, something too precise to dismiss as mere coincidence, a particular detail that belongs to you in the specific way that certain details only belong to certain people. Or maybe they heard something about you through the natural movement of information, through shared networks, something that told them where you are now, not geographically, but in the larger sense. Who you have become in the time since. What you are building, carrying, becoming in the version of your life that has been unfolding in their absence. And whatever it was, this thing they witnessed or received or encountered, it did something specific. It made the distance feel like a choice, a revisable one, because up until that moment, the distance had been something that simply existed, something that had arrived without a clear decision and had therefore not required a clear decision to continue. But encountering you, even indirectly, made it undeniable that the distance is something being maintained, something that would change if one of them did something different. They decided to do something different. I need to speak to the question that is sitting underneath everything you have been reading. Who you have been asking it since the second line of this reading, running through the possibilities in that Virgo way of cataloging and cross-referencing and arriving at probabilities before the information is complete, placing faces against what you have been hearing and measuring the fit of each one. I cannot give you a name. That is not how this works. But I can give you something more useful than a name. I can tell you what to feel for. When the right person crosses your mind as you sit with this reading, something in your chest is going to do something different from what it does when the wrong people cross your mind. A slight catch, a quality of warmth that is not generic. The specific, involuntary physical response of recognition that arrives before the mind has had time to confirm or deny. That response is the answer. It is already happening in some of you right now. Trust it. And tell me in the comments if someone just crossed your mind in a way that felt like more than a random thought. I want to know. Let me speak to the journey they are planning, because they have thought about this in more detail than a casual decision would warrant. They have thought about what they will say, not in the scripted sense of having memorized specific words they intend to deliver at your door, in the organic sense of having imagined the conversation enough times that they have a sense of what they want to communicate, even if the precise language is still unformed. They have thought about your likely response, about the different versions of what might happen when your door opens and they are standing on the other side of it. They have thought about whether you will be surprised, and they have thought about whether they want you to be. On that question, they have arrived at a complicated answer. Part of them wants the surprise to be visible in your face, wants to see the specific expression of someone who was not expecting this, but whose reaction suggests that not expecting it did not mean not wanting it. Part of them is terrified by that same expression of reading it incorrectly, of seeing what they hope to see because they so badly want to see it rather than because it is actually there. That tension is what has been keeping them at the looking up the address stage rather than the actually driving stage. But the tension is resolving, because at a certain point, the only way to know what expression you will see is to go and see it. But the tension is resolving, because at a certain point, the only way to know what expression you will see is to go and see it. I want to name something about this tension specifically because I think it is one of the most human things in this entire reading, and it deserves more than a passing mention. The gap between knowing what you want and being willing to move toward it in a form that makes your wanting visible to the person who could disappoint it is one of the most universally difficult gaps to cross. And this person has been living on the wrong side of that gap for a significant amount of time, has been wanting without expressing the wanting because the expressing of it felt more dangerous than the containing of it. What changed is not that the danger disappeared. What changed is that they decided the danger was worth it. That decision, made quietly, privately, without any external encouragement or any guarantee of a particular outcome, is one of the most genuinely courageous things a person can do. It does not look courageous from the outside. From the outside, it will simply look like someone showing up at your door. But from the inside, from the territory of someone who has spent significant time living with a wanting they could not bring themselves to act on, this is a crossing that required everything they had. They crossed it. I want to address something about you that I feel is the part of this reading you most need to hear. You have been more available for this than, not in the sense of having been waiting consciously or maintaining an open posture toward this specific person through deliberate effort, but in the deeper sense of not having closed, of not having made the internal decision, the one that is made when a chapter is genuinely over, to file this person in a way that does not leave room for revision. Some part of you kept the room, not out of sentimentality or an inability to let go, out of the specific, honest, quietly Virgo refusal to claim that something is finished when you can still feel that it is not. That capacity to sit with the unresolved rather than forcing a resolution that does not match the actual state of things is one of the rarest and most quietly courageous things a person can do. And it is why what is coming can come. A closed door does not open from the outside. What is coming toward you is finding a door that, despite appearances, was never fully shut. Let me tell you what happens when they actually arrive, because I see it and I want you to have the image of it before it happens. The first few seconds are going to be loud in the specific internal way that significant moments are loud even when they are physically quiet. You are going to see them and something in you is going to respond before you have decided how to respond, before the social mechanics of greeting someone at your door have had time to organize themselves into the appropriate sequence, before anything that comes next has been determined. Just the response, it is going to tell you something about where you actually stand, more clearly and more honestly than anything you could have figured out in advance through thinking about it. Let it. Do not manage the first few seconds into something appropriate before you have actually felt them. The appropriateness can come after. What matters in the immediate moment of the door opening is the true thing, the involuntary thing, the thing that has not been organized by your mind and is therefore the most accurate information available about what is real between you. After the first few seconds, you can be as composed and as thoughtful and as carefully Virgo as you need to be. But those first few seconds belong to something more honest than composure. Give them that. I want to speak to what their being there means, not what they say when they arrive, what the fact of their being there at all means. People do not show up at someone's house without a reason that justifies the particular vulnerability of physical presence. Texting is available, calling is available. Every form of communication that allows you to say something to someone while maintaining the option of retreat exists and is accessible and would have been easier. They are choosing the harder thing, not the harder thing in the sense of physical effort, though there is that. The harder thing in the sense of irreversibility. You cannot unshow up. You cannot unappear on someone's doorstep with whatever you are carrying. Once you have done it, you have done it. Whatever the response is, you have committed to having made the move. That commitment is the message beneath whatever message they intend to deliver. It says that whatever exists between you, in their estimation of it, is worth the specific vulnerability of choosing a form of contact that has no easy retreat, worth the risk of your face when you open the door being something other than what they are hoping for. Worth it anyway. That is not nothing. That is actually everything. there is a final image, and it is the simplest one in this reading. Your door, from their perspective, from the outside, the specific ordinary physical surface of your door, seen from the position of someone who is standing in front of it with something held inside them that is about to change the arrangement between you permanently, one way or another. They are not there yet, but the decision has been made, the address has been looked up, the journey has been mapped in their mind with enough detail that it has become real rather than theoretical. The version of themselves that continues to not do this has become less available as an option. What remains is the doing, and it is close. The only question left in this reading is not whether they are coming. It is whether you will be ready for what you see in yourself when you open the door.